T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. Today, we're going to talk about 5 things we want our kids to know after we've left this life. And we'll have that conversation right after these important messages. This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by the 79th Faulkner Bible Lectureship, Sunday, October 22nd through Thursday, October 26th on the campus of Faulkner University in Montgomery, Alabama. This year's theme is Reconnect. The Jenkins Institute's Better series will be a part of the program in 2023, along with sessions geared towards youth and family ministry. There will be daily chapel programs and evening keynotes to encourage and equip you in your walk with Christ. The mission of Faulkner University is to glorify God through education of the whole person, emphasizing integrity of character in a caring Christian environment where every individual matters every day. For more information, go to faulkner.edu or click the link in the description of this episode. I'm Travis Creasy. That's All-Pro Counselor with 3Chord Counseling in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Ben Hayes.
What's happening, man? I have, it feels like forever since we've been on here, but it's probably only been a week, but must have been that kind of week. So glad to be on here. And that over here is Will Mahan. So how you doing, Will?
I'm good. I'm glad to finally be planted back in Muscle Shoals for a little bit. So we have gone from the West Coast to Indiana over the past week and a half. So just glad to be sitting in my backyard and not moving.
There's a scene in Wayne's World where they're going and they keep changing the background and they change their accent and what they're doing when they're there. And I think they go to Delaware and there's nothing to do. So they're like, we're in Delaware, and no offense to our Indiana people. Actually, my brother just moved there, but that's kind of how I feel about Indiana. I guess you could shoot basketball. Hoosiers, Indiana basketball, that sort of thing. But it's good to have you back, Will.
Yeah, it was a fun little trip. The funniest part, I haven't told either of you, saving it for this, was met the preacher who had attended Freed Hardeman with y'all. And so he kind of had mentioned, hey, I know Ben and Travis. But then the rest of the day, he introduced me. He goes, hey, do y'all know the Ben and Travis guys at CYC? Will knows those guys. And so, once again, it's like, here's the celebrity because he knows Ben and Travis. So a lot of fun there.
That's pretty funny.
Considering who you've worked with besides us, I guess that's impressive list. But as I mentioned in the intro, we've got 5 questions. It ends up being really 7 answers, I guess, and kind of how we want to leave these kind of things to our kids. We've probably been, I would say, maybe you can agree with this as a counselor, we probably do not affirm our kids enough. I don't know if there's enough out there. Right. I want the Lord to affirm me as much as he possibly can. And so I think there's some aspect of that. We could always be more affirming to our kids.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely room for that. There's just so many things that go on in the world today. There's so many negative messages that kids get on and on and on that I'm not sure you can say it enough. I'm not sure that you can encourage them enough, but I'm also pretty sure I haven't done it enough. So there's that part. So I think this episode is sort of to encourage that. We're going to talk about some of these things, maybe what we would share, and hopefully in a way to get you guys to think about things that you would share.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, some questions that we want to answer for many years down the road, hopefully, when our kids are older and maybe we're gone on to our eternal reward, that might clue them in on what was important to us, what made us laugh, what made us cry, what we want them to know, what we thought of them, even at this age, right? Even if we're not gone to the hereafter. And it'd be a good reminder for us when we listen to this episode in the future, and remind ourselves of kind of where we were at this time in our lives and what was going on. So the first question is, what is your favorite book, movie, and song? You can pick one. You can answer all 3. You can give us a couple of options. And once again, we're kind of playing as though our kids will be older when they hear this. So, if there's a little more heavier movies, it's okay to kind of say that in this question. So obviously, I think book, we'd all say the Bible. And so I'm just throwing that one out there and getting it, hey, it's top notch. We want you reading the Bible, kids. It's the best. But just maybe something that's impacted you for the better in this life, same thing. And I would say, just for the movie answer, and this may be a cop-out, things that'll make you laugh. Things that will lighten the mood. Of course, there are things, I've watched movies that were serious that impacted me greatly and pushed me and encouraged me to be better. Certainly that. But I would say the more time there is to laugh, the better. And I think books, songs, movies all play into that. So that would be my movie suggestion, to watch some things that make you feel good, make you feel a little humorous as well.
Well, using that as a launching point, you said something that'll make you laugh. Probably there's a line in the movie that I would choose if I was just saying one to make you laugh, and one that I guess has always been a part is, a woman loves a man who can make her laugh, and that's off of Aladdin. So I would probably say the original cartoon Aladdin is one of my favorites. I would broaden that to say, if you can find a movie with Robin Williams in it, it's probably one of my favorites. I mean, there's just The Awakening was a great movie with him in it. It's a little bit more serious, but it's still got some of his funny stuff in it. But it's probably one of the most impactful movies that I watched that was serious. But Robin Williams, I saw a little meme yesterday that was just all the different characters of Robin Williams, and said this generation will not know what it's like to grow up with this man, And I was like, he was just incredible. So I think the original Aladdin would probably be my movie one. How about you guys?
You were talking about Robin Williams, and I remember growing up in our house, Mom and Dad always had us watch Mrs. Doubtfire whenever it came on, which is just another classic. One for me, the comedy, it's kind of hard to pick from just one genre of movies, but I remember going to the movie theater on a Sunday night with Dad and watching Remember the Titans. And it was just one of those, it had funny, it had humor, it had cultural references. It was just a great all around movie. And so that was one that, not necessarily a huge impact, but just a good solid movie. And then you can't go wrong with Dumb and Dumber. I would never want Amy or any future children that may come into our life to skip out on one of the classics. And so it just you say Robin Williams, Jim Carrey too. You can't get past him. So,
and if we don't get some Chris Farley in this conversation, we've missed out too. So I can mention a bunch of those. I would say, just real quickly, book would be Wild at Heart. I think the reason I picked that, there's a lot of good books. I've read a lot of good books. I love listening to and reading some good stuff, historical type books. But I think that one impacted me most in the way that I wanted to be a dad and live out my life as a dad. I've probably failed in a lot of those attempts that I had, in my mind what I was going to do. But it was just one of those really impactful books on my life when I was younger, and it's kind of stuck with me. I've looked back into it a few times. And then when it comes to songs, it's really hard for me because I love every genre of music. My kids ride in the car with me and they're like, how did we go from, a musical to country to rap to Christian to something else? It's across the board. So if I started trying to name one song, I'm just not sure that I could. It depends on if you said, which song for this thought or this mood, I might could, but
maybe artist. Could you?
The what?
Maybe the artist. Is there somebody?
Artist. Yeah, that one's probably a little more tough. Tough too, but I could probably say one of the artists that I used to love, and I not as much as he used to be, but Garth Brooks is hard not to just appreciate his songwriting skills. Like, I don't think anybody could tell a story quite like he could with a song. And so usually some of the songs that he didn't write all his songs. So I guess he at least was able to perform them in such powerful ways. But the song Wolves has become one of my favorite. He didn't write that. But, just the way he tells stories and the emotion behind them, he would probably be the guy that I'd say is one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, Garth would be really, really hard to beat just overall. 90s country would just be really hard to beat overall.
Mm-hmm.
Travis, we know the front men. Ben didn't get to see them, but we did. And just that whole time period was awesome. I think I would also have to push 80s rock out there a little bit for a workout playlist here or there. But the one I'm going to mention, which will make Lindsay so mad because I've told her this is what I want you to play at my funeral when I die, is Go Rest High by Vince Gill. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I just love it. I love the song. And I know that he wrote it about his brother, and it probably has no cultural reference to me at all because my life's been great and it's been really, really easy, and probably will be pretty easy compared to a lot of people and the lives they have to live. But it's a beautiful song, and it's the perfect funeral song. So, why not make everybody just a blubbering mess as they walk out of my funeral, So, that one's great. But growing up, Andrew and I, of course, he had to drive me around everybody. It was George Strait. That was, he was the king, and that was Andrew made me memorize all of George's 50-something number ones as we would go to school and church and those. So George Strait's got a really, I guess, soft spot in my childhood from growing up. Book, I'm glad you, because I'm going to go in a complete opposite direction, but it's called Living with Seal. And I've mentioned it on here before. And it's about just a random business owner guy up in New York and Atlanta. It's kind of where he splits his time. And he invites a Navy SEAL to come live with him for 30 days. And he just retells the story of basically how this Navy SEAL said, you got so much more in you than what you think you do. And it gives the chronicles of how he just overcame a mindset that was, I can't do any more than what I'm already doing. And the SEAL broke that very, very quickly. And so that was just a cool thing to see an ordinary guy, in our minds, be able to hit the mindset of what I call some of the worst dudes in the world that you would want to meet in a back alley, in dark. So that was a really cool one and an impactful one. For me, once we started this whole St. Jude running and all of that.
My song, I would go with Humble and Kind by Tim McGraw, and the book, and if you guys hadn't read this, 10 Men You Meet in the Huddle, Lessons from a Football Life by Bill Curry. It is top notch. I've read it like 2 or 3 times, and I give my copy away every time, and then I'm like, man, I want to read that book again. And so it's great. I think Bill is awesome. But that would be my song and book.
What do you think is your greatest trial that you've faced?
I think mine's pretty easy. It's what started this podcast, right? Leukemia / foster care, or having leukemia in the middle of foster care. And I guess with that, it would just be my message to my kids is you're one of the reasons that I fought so hard to stick around. You're the reason I got out of bed every day and went to 2.5-hour treatment 86 times. And so that would be the number one at 42. And I would prefer that stay the hardest one.
To me, life has been so good, and I understand I'm only 33. But I think like the biggest trial for me has just been complacency. Just the idea of things have, if I could have looked at my life at 18 and this is what I got, like everything went according to plan so far, and I think sometimes in that I look at the blessings that I have and I just go, man, we're doing something right here, and then I go, look at the world, or I may look at other people, and that comparison game starts to sink in a little bit. And so I think for me, it's just been, hey, you've got a whole lot more to do. Not from the standpoint of earning anything, spiritually or reaching a certain point, but just there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and you've been put in a position to be involved in a lot of different things. So go do it. And so I hope that Amy or anybody else would see that I want to be involved in things that are bigger than myself. And sometimes maybe that's why the schedule gets a little packed, is because I don't want to slow down. And I know that that's good and it's needed, but we're only given so much, and I want to fulfill that as much as I can. So I'd say just not getting caught up in the status quo, but maybe trying to strive for that perfection, knowing I won't get there, but keeping that the main focus and the goal.
The biggest thing for me is kind of the piggyback on why we started this podcast. Certainly your trial of going through leukemia was tough, even on the family end of things too. But I've also shared several times when I was in college that my girlfriend Tabitha Jean was killed in a car accident while I was there. I still tell that story. I think that a lot of people, I feel like everybody knows that happened. It's been such a talking point at some point, but every now and then I said something about it the other day, just that's why I do what I do as a counselor. It's why I do so much with the podcast, and it's really directed my life in a lot of different ways. And my kids already know that. They know the story. They know the family. And so that's something that I share with them quite often. It wasn't necessarily counseling or any of that stuff wasn't in my future or really thought about until something like that happened. I went through it. I was helped through it. I wanted to help other people through things. So I think that's kind of the launching point for so much of what I do in the counseling world. So it's hard not to mention that as probably the greatest trial, but it's the way it seems to be with a lot of people, is those things that seem to be our weakest moments and most difficult moments sometimes become the very things that drive us to do some of our best work.
Man, Satan must hate that. He must hate that.
It's a
reoccurring theme for that old guy. But anyways, not challenging anybody up in here, but I got Jesus on my side, which leads me to my favorite scripture. And you guys know what chapter it's going to be for sure. That's easy money. Favorite scripture, Romans 8. You're going to have to go. It's a battle between 1 and 18. I'm going to go 1. That makes 18 possible, but there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Out of anything else that ever happens to you, kiddo, hang on to that. Hang on to that and cling to Him. And all the trials that we just talked about, there's a reason why we can take those things and turn them for the good, is because the glory that is to come will outweigh the suffering here. It may not feel like it today. People listen to this, it may not feel like it today, but understand there is a purpose, a reason, a value, and there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus. Baby.
Well, I was going to go with a couple of specific verses, and then you mentioned Romans 8, and I say this often enough that I feel like I have to throw this one in because there's so many favorite verses. But I've said before, if the whole Bible disappeared and I can only have one chapter, give me Romans 12. And Romans 12 just says so much about what God's done. It says so much about what we have in Him, and it says so much about how we treat other people. And so I don't want the rest of the Bible to go away. But if it did, Romans chapter 12.
Preach that for a long time.
Yeah, gives us so much stuff and so much about who we're supposed to be. So that whole, live peaceably, as much as lies within you, live peaceably with all people. Don't be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. There's just so much good stuff there. So I'd say let's just go with Romans 12. Will?
I'd probably go with John 16, 33. I think it's pretty familiar. Jesus says, take heart. In the world you're going to have some troubles, but take heart because I've overcome the world. And it's just, it kind of goes back to what a lot of people, a lot of coaches have told me, parents, you go win the battle because the war's already done. And there's a lot of comfort there. And I kind of like those words in red, especially when Jesus goes, I got it and everything's good. It may not always be good here, but it's going to be good. then it's just the insurance there. So that's probably what I would go with.
Good stuff.
Number 4, what can I start doing right now to have a happier life? I still feel pretty young to be answering this question. Number 1, learn to understand the things that you control. Decide when something happens, is this something that I am upset enough that I'm going to go talk to that person? I need to go talk to that person, or can I move on? Can I let it go and roll off my back like water off the back of a duck? And so that's kind of one of those things. And going to the slight edge, read a book. There's so many things you can Google it, right? We have a Google machine. But one of the things in the slight edge is just read 10 pages of a good book every day. Of course, we would all start with the Bible. That's a good book to start with, 10 pages, but other things as well. But I think that number 1 thing of, can I control this? Do I have control of it? Does it need to be changed? And then be able to move on if the answers to those are no. Just being able to carry a light weight and realize your expectations can get you into trouble. I think of old Clark Griswold talk about movies. He just has this great expectation that Christmas is going to be the greatest thing ever, and just understand that the same thing with your dad. What you're talking about, dad wise. I remember thinking I'll be the best dad ever when I'm a dad, and that's certainly not come to fruition. And so there's things that you're like, here's what a good dad does, and I'm going to shoot for that. But the days that I mess it up, I tried.
That serenity prayer is something I go over with clients a lot. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that's what you're saying, is just that. And I would say yes to that. I was just going to go with a simple word: budget. And I mean budget, a lot of different things. I've probably had more frustration in my life because I didn't budget early on financially. And so I tell people all the time, budget financially, but budget your time. And I'm still struggling with that one too. Try to figure out how much time am I going to give to the things of work, the things of hobbies, the things of family. You got to make a decision. Everything you say yes to, there's something else you say no to. So budget financially, budget time-wise. I think that's just a good word to stick back there. Remember to budget.
Well, here comes the wild millennial, because I'm going to say go travel. And
as long as you budget for it
with the money. That's right. But to me, of course, we just got back from a week in California and just driving all over, and being in North Alabama, you hear a lot of terrible stuff about the state of California at times, and from other states. But we met one rude person in a week. And to me, that was the coolest part of being in California, is really everybody's just trying to do their best. And sometimes it's really, really good to experience other ways of life, other people, other cultures. Just because I come back to good old North Alabama and I'm going, this is a good spot. And I think sometimes the benefits of going and traveling are that rest that you get, just the getting away, but also the gratitude of coming back home and seeing how great you have it and how good things are in your life, and hopefully just gives you a purpose to know, hey, I've got a lot of good things in my life, and I can do a lot of good things with those. And so I would definitely say go travel. I was talking to a guy that's working in ministry, and it's his second year, and I said, well, where you travel to? And he goes, nowhere. And I was like, you got to go do something, get away. And so I think it's always a good thing. And whether that's mission work, vacations, weekend trips, getting outside, I think it's just, there's a lot of benefits that we probably don't even know about to those things.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because there's so much that, the trips that I've taken, some of them have been mission work, and most of them probably. Most of my big trips have been on mission trips. But you come back with a new appreciation for what you have. You also come back with a appreciation for all the cultures in the world, and the different things that you find in those places. So that's a great one.
I would wrap up that whole question with learn to, and this can be to anyone. I mean, these are great prayers. If it's just this, learn the phrase, I love you and thank you.
Yeah.
Like those two things, even in the hardships, when I'm getting coached or I'm getting told something that I don't necessarily want to hear, but it's for my benefit, to be able to say thank you for loving me and seeing enough in me to correct me. Or, so I think thank you and I love you. If you can say that to the Lord every day, I think that impacts and changes your life immediately. And the final question is, what do you like? And this is going to be, I'll go ahead and say it. My kids may not feel like this is the case, but this is one of those where there's so many things we could say. Like there's just tons and tons of things that we could say about what we like about our kids. And Ben, I feel sorry for you, brother, because you got 5 of them. And we've got a limited amount of time. But man, there's just, what I love about Haley is she has a love for life. And I think that's maybe the one good thing I have given her, right? All the other bad habits she's probably picked up from me. But man, I just try my best every day to not be so old man that I take that away from you, Haley, that you just love life. And Daniel, it's going to be hard not to just love the blue eyes, man, because they just are bright. But I just love the curiosity that you have. Like you like building things, you like tearing them down, and you're fired up about it. And so once again, the old man in me, I worry, concern that I kind of take some of that away. And certainly if I don't want to keep them from the Lord, and I certainly don't want to take away Haley's love for life and Daniel's curiosity about how things are built, and even more so right now, how they can be torn down.
Well, I'll start my list so we get done by midnight. No, there's a lot of things I could say about each of my kids, and there's a lot of them, like you said, but I'll start at the top with Jackson. I love the fact that he shares the sense of humor that I have. He likes to, kind of like we do, send me random videos or memes or crazy stuff to laugh at. He shares the love for like the genres of music, mostly like the 60s, 70s, and 80s rock and stuff like that. He loves that. And just that he's okay with just being him, and sometimes maybe too much so. Sometimes that also makes us butt heads a little bit. But, I appreciate Jackson, you for just being willing to be the person that just kind of stands out in the crowd. I love Destin for her motherly instincts. I love her for just constantly wanting to take care of. She's constantly fixing lunches for everybody, trying to clean up around the house, trying to do those things, maybe to a fault sometimes, but love you for that. And just for all of the energy that you have to show towards people around you. And so I love that. I love Bransley's, and I don't know the best way to put it, but just her, I don't know, leisure of life. She's just willing to, she's like my mom. She just kind of floats around, and it's like sunshines and rainbows and butterflies in her mind. And she's getting to that teenage years where that's starting to begin to, to be a little bit more of a struggle, but she's always just been comfortable living in her own world. I remember when she was a kid, she could play by herself and didn't need anybody else to give her anything. And so that was always fantastic that she loved that. And she gives great hugs, as do the other girls as well. Stana is just Stana, her fire. And man, everybody loves Stana. And I kind of joke with, you take her, but you bring her back. She has such a personality. She loves people. She loves older people, younger people. She loves to pick at them. She loves to laugh with them. And so she is just a big ball of personality. And sometimes it is a big ball of emotion at times. But man, she just she has a way about her. I'm pretty convinced that Stana, you will one day rule the world. And then Cypress is, I just love the playfulness of Cypress. I mean, he wants to wrestle all the time. He's got a pretty good little sense of humor too. So he's pretty fun to do stuff with. We bought a car the other day at Walgreens, and it was a toilet bowl car. That was the one he picked out of all the cars that he could pick. But we've spent the weekend kind of wrestling around. I just love that age anyway. So I know there's a lot yet to come in his life. So there you go. There's a quick rundown. Sorry.
Nice.
Not super quick.
Will?
I'm just glad Ben remembered all of his kids and didn't leave one out, because that would have been rough.
We were all checking the list. We're like, oh, good.
That's right. He couldn't do their birthdays, but
Give me a few minutes.
give you 20 minutes to get them all. To Emmy's just Emmy too. You know, she I've said she was perfect from the day she was born. She still is perfect. To me, she'll always be perfect. But Emmy has a death fear of missing out on anything. Like FOMO is insane with her. And I love that, because she's always up to go do anything. Whether it's going outside dressed up as a superhero and we're going to hunt down people in the neighborhood, taking a trip to Indiana with me. She always wants to go, which brings out the stubbornness of she never ever wants to fall asleep, because she's always terrified that something's going to happen while she's asleep. But just her adventurous spirit is really, really large. And to me, I always thought, oh, we'll do sports, we'll do all these things. And even if she doesn't do sports, I still see that drive to just go and be a part. And to me, that's all I could ever want for in a child. And so that's huge. I also love her ability to love. Her and I kind of got into it on the way back from Indiana yesterday, and she'll never remember this by the time she hears this podcast. But she came home and she told Lindsay, "Hey, I wasn't good for Dad," and it just kind of broke her heart that she had frustrated, or that things had not necessarily gone the complete way. You know, when you leave a theme park, but it's leaving any theme park with any child. You know, it's not just that, but just her. I really do believe that she's going to impact a lot of people just because she cares. She's honest, sometimes brutally honest. But the one thing every night since she could understand, we have prayed. And if we do not pray, she will call us out and go, we have to pray. And there are people that we told Emmy about last year that for 365 days, she prays for them every single night. And she will always pray for them until we say, hey, everything's okay. We don't need to pray for them anymore. And just to me, to be a 3 and 4 year old and have the ability to go, hey, God can fix it. And so we're going to pray to him. That's a dad's dream, you know, in my opinion. So keep it up there, baby girl. And you're going to go some pretty far places.
Well, guys, I appreciate you sharing. Obviously, the encouragement in this episode is, if you're listening to it, tell them, whether it's your kids, people at church. Better is open rebuke than love concealed. And that's kind of something we wanted to do, as the proverb writer certainly writes to us. And we would love for you to share this episode on whatever platform you're on. Comment with the answers to your answers to those 5 questions. Look out for Ben's Friday Refresh. Comes out every other Friday. It's football season, so the good old-fashioned dislike is coming out. I'm actually going to record as soon as we hop off here today. But thank you for listening. Like I said, please share. We would love a 5-star rating, review, whatever podcast platform you've got, however you can review it. Share it with people. That's the number one way podcasts get shared, is by word of mouth. And guys, I appreciate your answers. Thanks for challenging me today.
Same to you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.